Well, hello. This is Jyoti Singhvi with the ACE Group, and I'm super excited to have our friend, Demir Bentley. Hi, Demir, with the Lifehack Method. You know what? I say our friend because I have known Demir over the course of a few months, and I feel like he is my friend, and everybody that he talks to kind of becomes, or probably gets the sense that he is their friend. And I think very soon after you engage in this conversation with Demir and I, you will probably start feeling that he is your friend. That's just his style. Demir, it's a compliment for you.
Just don't ask me for money. That's all I ask.
Oh, that was a lead up for that. All right, so Demir is an expert productivity coach, and he's a co-founder of the Lifehack Method. What the heck is the Lifehack Method? We will find out soon. His coaching combines personal accountability with daily practice to unleash your best productivity every single day. His client list is riddled with high-profile names like Facebook, Google, Uber, PepsiCo, and Lexar. Before starting Lifehack Method, he was like one of us. He worked in, he worked at a major bank. He worked at the highest levels of government, technology, and finance. I say one of us because he worked the crazy 60, 80 hours. And his work has been featured in Forbes, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, and many other media outlets.
I'm blushing.
See, good thing you don't need makeup like women do, so yes. And fun fact, Demir and his lovely wife, Carrie, whom I have had the great pleasure of getting to know also, live in a completely nomadic style. What does that mean? Well, they live in different countries for several months or a couple of years at a stretch. Right now, they are in Colombia. Before this, they were on a boat. Yeah, that's Colombia. Before this, they were on a boat in Croatia. Then they were doing a retreat in Bali. And before that, they were in Spain. Well, Demir, welcome. We're so happy to have you here. Demir, I have to tell you how I found Demir, and it's very important. So personally, I was struggling a lot with organization and time management. We all have so much to do, right? And we're always juggling so many things, work, household, kids, work, did I mention that? And community and family, right? And I would search up a lot of tips on not procrastinating or productivity, et cetera, and everybody said this to me. Well, plan it out, put it on your calendar, and it's done. I'm like, no, just because you put it on your calendar, it doesn't get done. And then on Amy Porterfield's show, I found Demir's interview, and I fell in love with everything Demir had to say because I really connected with what Demir was saying. Demir was really like me, or like one of us. And without further ado, Demir, tell us, what has your journey been like? Have you always been so organized? Tell us what brought you here.
Well, first of all, thank you for that awesome intro. I mean, I do like to think that we think about productivity different. We're obsessed with human potential, but I think maybe the biggest difference between how we think about productivity and other people do is I think we're a little bit trapped in this, like what I call golden goddess philosophy that we have, where it's just like, you're perfect. Just get out of your own way, just listen to your instincts. And I don't know about you, but I was born with terrible instincts around productivity. I have shiny object syndrome. I never want to stick through and see things through. I always want to switch over to a new project that's sexier and more exciting. I suffer from procrastination, and I've always been like this. In fact, funny story from my family is that when my mom first told her friends that I was a productivity coach, she was laughing so hard that she spit Coca-Cola out of her nose because I was so disorganized as a child that the fact that this child would become a productivity coach was like to her like the funniest thing in the world. So I think we bring two things, a lot of empathy. Like I come from a place of like, I was there, I know deeply what it feels like to be in that story of like, I'm not productive, I'm so chaotic, I can never be productive. I lived that. That was a lived experience for me. And also, we realize that peak performance is not a natural state. You're not getting in your own way. You're not doing anything wrong. You have to do a lot of things right. I don't think it's Herculean. And I think your life gets better in every single way the second you add a couple drops of organization, but it's not natural. And when we say that it's natural, oh, this, what, you're just doing something wrong, Jody. You know, like you just got to let it flow. It's like, no, it doesn't naturally flow. It is a artificial state of being. It's not a hard state to get into, but it's not natural. Natural is us walking across the savannah and like throwing spears. That's natural, right? What we're doing sitting in front of a computer for 8 or 9 hours, that's not natural. So I think those are some distinctions that we bring. Sorry, I took that question there. I know that you were asking about my personal background, but I mixed in a little bit there.
That's absolutely okay. Now, tell us about, when did it occur to you that this is what you could be doing? I mean, you had a fantastic job in a lot of different, I mean, the last job was what, at a bank? Where were you working?
No, I worked in finance. So we had it's a long story, not worth the payoff, but I worked in, I innovated a section of finance called data forensics, and we sold all of our information to, hedge funds and traders and all that kind of stuff. So it was the kind of job where when I told you about it, you'd be like, Demir, tell me what you do. I'm like, you don't want to hear. Oh, Demir, tell me what you do. No, you don't want to hear. And then I tell you and you're like snooze off after like 3 seconds. So it was not an exciting job, but it was definitely in finance.
And tell us about your lifestyle back then. Did you have a lifestyle balance? Like how many hours were you working? What really triggered this whole, and how did you find out about this this productivity hack, or how did you become that different person? Because you really do have an amazing lifestyle.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
I'll take a couple of steps back because you sort of asked me like, I'm sort of like that personal trainer who used to be 300 pounds and finally figured out, like something finally clicked in their head. They finally figured out the sort of what I call the recipe. If you want to make bread, the recipe for bread is super simple. But if you don't know it, good luck trying to figure it out, right? Good luck trying to figure it out because there's actually a very specific order that things have to be done in for the bread to rise and for it to come out with a nice little crispy crust to be edible, right? And so I'm sort of like this person who was trapped on the other side of productivity where it felt like no matter how many books I read, no matter how much I tried, effort that I expended, it just nothing worked. And I got trapped in this like hopeless feeling of like, well, I guess I'm just trapped here. And so my tactic was I'm the kind of person who was still able to be successful in spite of my bad productivity, but I just had to put twice as much work in. So I had to do 80 hours of work, whereas all my coworkers were doing 40 or 50 hours. And so that was my only answer because I tried to figure other things out and it just didn't work. And so when it finally clicked for me, that was the beginning of me being a coach because of course, like, the second you figure out, when I say the secret, I don't want to make it like it's magic, but when you figure out the recipe, you want to tell other people. You want to be like, oh, I see you suffering. Like, let me tell you, I was where you were. And so I come from that place of, I'm still to this day excited when I see somebody who's trapped in that story and trapped in poor productivity, because I'm like, no, really, you can escape. You can beat this thing, And so I bring that sort of childlike, I think, excitement of like, it never ceases to excite me to see somebody move from sort of that hopeless, like I'll always be dealing with these productivity, drags on my efficiency, almost like I'm driving with the emergency brake on. And people just start to accept it and it feels so sad. And I love to see that transition when they get over there. They just get a little bit of organization and their eyes light up. I just love that transformation. I'm addicted to it, really.
Absolutely. And I connect with that because that's what I'm after when I am coaching people on their presentation or communications, because no, you can do it. You can be really confident. You can be really articulate. So I sense that feeling. So speaking of the recipe, I am still learning the recipe and actually following it to the T, which you have taught me in the tribe as your mentee. Now, tell our audience, what can we do to increase productivity in our lives? Again, we all have so many balls we're juggling, and the stress level has just gone through the roof, especially now with the epidemic, and the amount of work has soared. A lot of us don't have additional help, etc. And how do we not only do amazing work, do it fast in shorter time, and bring some peace and calm to our minds? Maybe there are 3 questions here.
So what I'm hearing is, where do we start? It's like a big ball of yarn that's all knotted up. It's like, where do I start unknotting this giant problem called productivity? Because I think people do sense that there's dimensions of it. There's the mental game, like procrastination, fear, anxiety, resistance, even sadness and depression that we can experience inside of our workday. There's the tactical aspect of like all the programs. Which program do I use? How do I use it? Like, there's a time management aspect, planning your week and planning your month and planning your days. And so it almost feels like this big tangled knot, and it's like, where do I start? So what I like to do is, I mean, well, first of all, I'll say you're in my Lifehack Tribe, and in Lifehack Tribe, we teach the Lifehack Method. The method is a 4-stage method that's get radical clarity, not just clarity, get radical clarity, work on yourself, master yourself, your own productivity, master your systems, and then unlock freedom. And so those 4 steps tend to be this, what we call order of operations. I don't know if anybody remembers like 7th, 8th grade when you first started learning algebra, and it's important where you put the parentheses, right? So it actually, in productivity, it sort of matters where you start untying the knot. Right? It does matter that you start in the right place. Why? Because if I took you to like level 3 and I gave you 3 virtual assistants and a ton of systems that amplify your productivity, Bill Gates has a great quote. He says, technology just amplifies whatever's underneath it. So if you're massively disorganized, if you're suffering from, if you have a weak mental game, you're suffering from really negative self-talk and procrastination, fear, and anxiety, you're going to feel much worse if I put all of these systems and all of these virtual assistants around you, because it will just be a magnifying glass to what's there. That's why we have to work on ourselves first. And inside of the world and working on ourselves, I think the number one place to start and the lowest hanging fruit on any tree is learning how to win the week. Just those 3 words, win the week. I think about life and your productivity like a game. Right. And that's a lot better than thinking about it like a war. Like it's a game, like you can lose, but like nothing terrible is going to happen most of the time. It's just like whatever. You had a bad week, start over again. Right. Had a bad game, start over. And so the game to sort of the game is, I think, sort of Sunday to Sunday is a good way to think about the game. And what that gives you is a fresh perspective of like every single week you can get out there, you can play your game, you can try your best. And then you can wipe the slate clean every Sunday, learn the lessons from last week, and try again. And if we bring that sort of attitude of just playing Sunday to Sunday, then one, it tamps down our anxiety. Because when we're thinking about the whole month and the whole year and our whole life, like it's like, your head explodes. So when we just think about like just this week, that's all I have to tackle. I just have to hold this week in my head. And when you actually plan it out, and you actually have a methodology, which is what we teach people, a method for like every Sunday in less than 30 minutes too. I mean, we're not talking about hours, less than 30 minutes on the weekend, plan your week, and you can be in a place where you feel really confident that you can A, win the game, but also, and this is important, B, get better at your game, right? Because what I like to say is right now, I think over 94% of people do not plan their weeks on Sunday, which is crazy because almost everybody knows that they should be doing it. Sorry, no, I got those numbers wrong. 94% of people say they know they should be planning their week on Sunday, and less than 1% of people actually do it. I mean, think about that number. There's something out there we know we should be doing. Probably people are listening right now like, of course I know I should plan my week on Sunday, but did you know that you and 99% of other people don't actually do it? So what's great about what I call the winning the week strategy is by really just making that small commitment of investing 30 minutes on the weekend, you can put yourself into a place where you are immediately feeling a huge result, feeling more in control, less anxiety, more power, things are going your way more, you're getting in front of things that could have blown up in your face. But 2, and I think this is so important, is you can have this sort of ability to get better every week with this feeling of like, wow, this last week was better than the week before, which was better than the month before, which was better than the quarter before. This idea of progression, like I can feel myself getting better. So I'm gonna wrap this whole point up and apologize for the ramble, but I would put this whole thing under the header of when people are looking for the lowest hanging fruit on the productivity tree, it's always pre-planning your week and winning the week and learning a structure for winning your week. That's the lowest hanging fruit on the tree. If you did nothing else, you get the biggest impact from that.
Absolutely, absolutely. This is such an important point. Like you said, 90% or 99% of us know about it, but we end up not doing it for whatever reasons. Sometimes I may procrastinate, or sometimes I'm so overwhelmed with everything that I have to do. I tend to just not do that simple step. So yes, planning your week on Sunday, important. Now the next step. So again, I just want to frame this by saying that this conversation is definitely for the people who struggle with planning and execution, and then people who are pretty good, but they could still get better, and they can get great, accessible, implementable strategies from you. So the next step is this: execute. You have everything on your calendar. How do you get yourself to execute? The executors, they think, oh, this is simple stuff, right? Just do it. But then there are people who may either be wanting to procrastinate, or just don't feel like doing that task, or something else comes up, right? How do you handle it? How do you move yourself to doing it? And let me just say also that, about 20 to 30% of our jobs we really enjoy. Oh, I can't wait to do that, slideshow or whatever else, and a large percentage of it is boring stuff. So how do you actually want to get to doing those things? Execute.
Yeah, this is a great question. I mean, there's dimensions to this, right? I would think about this like an onion. There's layers of this onion, right? I think one of the layers of the onion is understanding that half of the time we're sort of stuck between the general and soldier mode, right? When you really haven't planned your week properly on Sunday, when you didn't just really occupy that what I call general mode. What does the general do? The general, trains the troops and secures the supply lines and chooses the strategy and chooses where you're going to fight, right? That's mapping out the structure of the battle. When you've done that really, really well, what you find is you're able to sort of let that go and get into soldier mode, where you're actually in your day and shooting. And when you don't have a good plan, what tends to happen is part of your brain's trying to stay in general mode, while part of your brain is trying to be in soldier mode, and you're failing. You're not being a really good soldier, and you're not being a really good general. You're sort of like trying to bridge the gap at all times. It's also exhausting, by the way. That's also why you can end the day and have got nothing done and feel like you're totally exhausted, because it's mentally exhausting to try to occupy them. When you really trust yourself, when you come in on Monday and you go like, here's the plan, then you've got the ability to like drop into soldier mode. What's soldier mode? It's where you can be in the exhilaration of surfing the wave, of just really like being present inside of your work. Because the truth is that even in work that we're not loving, there's something great about feeling masterful about your work. There's a great feeling about feeling like you're getting a lot of work done. And everybody knows that feeling intuitively. We could have been filing papers, the most boring job in the world, but if we're just nailing it and sailing through it, there's that feeling of like, yeah, man, I'm really crushing this job. But we deny ourselves that when we're straddling the planning version of ourselves and the execution version of ourselves. So that's I think one like layer of that onion. But once you peel the onion, there's mental game layers of that. Like, everybody suffers from procrastination, but it's not true that everybody suffers from procrastination for the same reason. Some people's reasons can be worthiness. Other people's reasons can be, that at the end of this project, you're going to have to stand up in front of a group and present it. And so your stage fright is coming out inside of your, so procrastination can be something that we all experience, but we can experience it for 1,000 different reasons. And so we also have to get curious about like what's happening inside of me. There is an internal journey around productivity to understand like, why do I do this thing? And what is it that I'm afraid of here, right? There's games that we can play to hack around that, right? One of the games, just as an example that I really like to play, is when I've got something that I'm procrastinating on, I have what I call crack the seal. Crack the seal is, I say, Demir, you don't have to work on this today. You don't have to work on this. All you have to do is open all the windows and all the materials and get everything ready. And then you can just save it for tomorrow and just get all the windows open. Now, of course, when I have all the tabs open and everything's ready, guess what? I actually feel a lot more like taking it on, right? And so that's me hacking around my resistance by playing games with myself, right? And so this is another thing we teach people in Lifehack Tribe and in my coaching is how to find these little games. And we've like gathered all of them up to be like, hey, try this. And it goes on and on because, similarly, we talk about stage one of the Lifehack Method is radical clarity. A lot of people don't know what action to take because they're clear on where the action's going to get them. A lot of people say, Demir, make me incredibly efficient. I say, why? I'm like, what do you mean, why? Because I want to be incredibly efficient. Why? Are you going to get paid more? Are you going to live a happier lifestyle? Like, how do you benefit from being more productive? And people are so disconnected from their benefit, from their productivity, that of course their lizard brain, their animal brain is like, I don't do this. Like, let me clue everybody in here. Your animal brain is a finely tuned calculator for, is this worth it? Right? If your brain decides that the juice isn't worth the squeeze, you can try to whip that donkey all you want, but it ain't going to leave the stable. Make sense?
Yeah.
So there's dimensions of that. There's not one contributing factor to like apathy, lack of action, lack of discipline. The truth is you have to hit it from a bunch of sides, but then when you do, all of a sudden you see that wall start to crumble and you feel yourself come into your work really just wanting to work and ready to work and enjoying, regardless of what you're working on, enjoying the feeling of masterful work.
Absolutely. Now, in enjoying that feeling of masterful work, you just mentioned that earlier. One of the things is to realize what the benefits of that task is, even if you're filing and doing something boring like that. What are the benefits? I'm going to be more organized. It's going to make my job easier. Even if you're opening up all those documents for the next job, it's making it easier. So that's how you're
I wouldn't say that. I would rephrase it a little bit, right? I would just say there's necessary BS in life and unnecessary BS. And we'd be surprised how much unnecessary BS there is, like things that we've brought in, people, situations that like, this is not getting me where I want to go in life. I've just put myself in this situation with this person, with this client, but it's not getting me where I want to go. Necessary BS is saying this person, this thing, filing these papers, dealing with this nasty person is standing between me and where I need to get in life. And I'm radically clear that I can't get where I need to get until I deal with this necessary BS. So you can feel like it's BS. I'm not going to take that away. You don't have to look at something and be like, I love filing these papers, but you can just sort of be like, okay, filing these papers is the next step that's standing between me and where I need to go. And when you're radically clear about that, surprise. And when you know how to enjoy being masterful in filing the papers, and this is something I call the sticky focus game that I teach people how to have fun with any project that you're taking on, how to turn anything that you're working on into just sort of a gamification, then you've got the ability to be like, fine, let's do this. I'm going to set some timers. Let's go. I'm going to see how fast I can get this done. And everybody knows that sensation. When you're faced with something negative, you can bring the negative part of you like, oh God, I don't want to do this. Or you can bring that part of you like, okay, great. How much of this can I get done in the next 30 minutes? Why don't I play a game with myself? How much of a dent can I put in this in the next 30 minutes? I play a game with myself. I always get ready before my wife because she's a gorgeous woman and has to do things to stay gorgeous. And so I'm always ready early. And so I'll say like, oh, it looks like she has 15 more minutes. I'll set a timer for 15 minutes and just say, how much of my living room can I clean in 15 minutes? And you'd be surprised, I can clean the entire living room, top to bottom, when I'm engaged in that way. When the timer's running and I'm gamified it and I'm like, I bet I could clean the whole living room in 15 minutes. All of a sudden now, guess what I do? But on a Saturday, if I tell myself, you must clean the living room, I can drag my feet for 2 or 3 hours, like picking up one little tissue, And so this is sort of, it really depends what your approach is.
This is really helpful. And then also kind of like time bounding ourselves. I use a different word, but I know you have gamification, the sticky focus gamification, which is fantastic. Now, in terms of planning, that really helps us be more productive. And in terms of time bounding, what else, how are we shrinking the amount of time it's taking us to do something? For example, you were doing the same task in 60 to 80 hours. A lot of us, I mean, this is a common knowledge, right? Work expands to the amount of time you
Parkinson's
have.
law.
Exactly. So how do we shrink it? Or sometimes I'm in the middle of a launch, as I mentioned yesterday. I just feel I have a lot of things to do. And I think this is also leading me to my next question. There isn't enough hours in a day. I have a gazillion things to do. How do we kind of, first of all, is that really true? And how do we go around that? I mean, I think it's mindset.
Well, there's 2 questions here, and I want to tell me which one you want me to answer. There's the, hey, Parkinson's law. How do we How do we make it work for us instead of working against us? And then the second, the one that you asked is, hey, there's not enough hours in the day. True or not? I can take either one of those on. Okay.
Second one, there is not enough hours in the day.
I can tell you right now, that is what I call a lower truth. What I mean by a lower truth, it's not a lie, but it's a lower truth. There's a higher truth too. A lower truth is something that has some truth to it. It just is sort of a dead end. It traps you. When you say the sentence out loud, there's not enough time in the day, or there's not enough time in my week, what's the NLP of that saying to you? I'm trapped. Really what you're saying is I am being victimized by the limits that I had. And if I didn't have these limits, boy, I could really do something else. And I've got bad news for you. If we snapped our fingers tomorrow and there were 36 hours in the day instead of 24, I can tell you exactly what would happen. Within a year or less, you would just grow what's on your plate. You take on more projects, you try to do more things, and within a year, you would be right back on a 36-hour day telling me there's not enough time in the day. So is the problem not having enough time? No, the problem is we're not radically clear about the things that we need to do with our time, and we're not in radical ownership of the time we have, right? Our desire to do things is unbounded. Right? If you're watching this instead of playing video games in your grandma's basement, that means that you're an A person. You're an A-type, succeed. You want to write those books. You want to start those businesses. You want to succeed. You want things great for yourself and your community and your family, right? So that means that if we grew the pot, you would just expand the amount that you want to do. That's not the answer. It really isn't, right? So what's the higher truth? The higher truth is the problem isn't I don't have enough hours in the day. The problem is I'm not radically clear and in ownership of what I'm doing with my time and the results I'm going to get with that, right? So it's that radical ownership. Like when I'm in radical ownership with my time, I can always feel that I made the best use of my time. Often, it's not that people get to the end of the week and say, I didn't finish anything, because I have tremendously successful, productive clients who don't finish their to-do list at the end of the week. And I have clients who come to me suffering before I start to work with them, and they don't finish anything. And so everybody in the world finishes the week, successful or not, happy or not having gotten everything done on their to-do list. That's just like breathing oxygen. Everybody is on the same plane.
Great to know. Thank you.
Yeah. The difference is my clients who are really successful can look in the foyer mirror when they come in Friday in the evening and be like, yes, given the time, given how much I had on my plate, I did the right things, I did them masterfully, and I feel like I can give myself permission to be a dad, to be a mom, to like be a human being, to go to church and not think about this stuff, right? So it really isn't the amount of time, it's really how we're using that time. And I think we intuitively know that. It really is advanced common sense. But if we allow that voice of there's not enough time to keep growing, what that does is it puts us in a victim posture toward time. And it's quite the opposite of what we need to do. We need to get in radical ownership of our time.
This is really, really helpful. Just to kind of know that I can do it and I can do it in that amount of time. And also just the knowledge that not everybody finishes everything on their to-do list, because the to-do lists do get very optimistic sometimes. Could you also speak to us about focus, which has become a big problem these days, given so many things that demand our time, not only just social media and different devices, but then different thoughts in our mind, or right now a lot of people are working from home, kids, household, etc., etc. Even if that's not the case, even if you are in your office, focus is not always the key. So how do we just draw in and be in alignment, be in that flow, be focused to do the job or the task at hand?
Now, this is somewhere where it actually is pretty easy, right? I think we tend to think that we need to like grit our teeth and like clench our fists and make ourselves focus, almost like we're looking at a penny, trying to move it with the power of our brain. Like, we just try to make it happen, right? The truth is that you can fall into focus. Focus will naturally happen when you clear away distractions, right? Now, week 1, when you do that, it will be better than week 0. The first week you try it, you'll have a better sensation than not trying it. But what will happen naturally is your brain will heal itself. I do think what's happening is that our attention is being cut up into such tiny little pieces that we're not able to experience any kind of momentum on anything. no momentum hanging out with our husband, no momentum hanging out with our kids, no momentum on a task at work, no moment, like we're not experiencing momentum in practically anything in our life. And what that's doing is I think it's actually um, it's hurting us. It's not, and I think it's hurting us mentally, and that it creates like a sense of well, first of all, from a productivity perspective, it makes us feel like we really can't get anything done because we're touching everything but moving nothing, right? Imagine
So
that.
true.
Imagine going and like I said, you have to move 8 balls up the hill, Jyoti, and you just went around running and just touching every single one of them as fast as you can. You would be exhausted at the end of a day, but I would come back and be like, you haven't moved any of these balls forward. You'd be like, yes, but I'm exhausted. That's sort of going to email, coming back to the project, email, then your kids come in, then the dog, then, oh, I should grab a snack. Like that is you running around touching everything but moving nothing, right? And so good news, bad news. Good news is that when you step into ownership to re-engineering your environment and say, I'm reclaiming focus, you really don't have to make it happen just by simply removing distractions. You will get into focus. The bad news is you have to say, this is not going to accidentally happen. In this culture, what people are trying to do, and now unfortunately it's become a cultural expectation, is to just split my time into, impossibly small fragments. And I need to engineer a life where I prevent that from happening. And it's a big thing that I help with my clients. I help clients who have like 500 employees who say, but Demir, everybody needs me all the time. And I can engineer them long periods in the day when people are self-serving or they know they can come at another time. And so if I can do it with a mother of 3 who's the CEO of a company that has 500 people in it, then I can definitely do it with somebody who's a freelancer or working on a team, right? So it really helps people to know like, hey, there's some pretty impossible things that have happened. If they can do that, you can definitely take ownership of your environment and create some focus.
This is really helpful. And I loved your analogy of touching the balls and not moving. And in a lot of people's lives, that's exactly what happens. I think that's a really great segue to one of your tactical tools, which is very useful. I wonder if you could speak about that. It's the Post-it method.
Yeah.
And I think that also aligns with your 1, 3, and 5. Can you talk about that? Because that has.
So I'm not going to teach the sticky focus game here because that would take like 30 or 40 minutes.
Got it.
But I can say, needless to say, the sticky focus game is something that I teach it's like the first thing I teach every single one of my clients. I've taught it to like kids as young as 9. I've taught it and I teach it to CEOs, and it doesn't really matter. Why? Because they're all human beings. Like we need to learn how to gamify our work. So I'll just say, at the end of the day, what the sticky focus game is based on is time blocking, which is, Pomodoro's, classic time blocking techniques. I mean, that's been around for a while. But what we do is we sort of put that on steroids and we gamify it so that we really allow people to bring their best self to play. Because often at work, we bring this attitude of like, work. I need to put a frown on and I need to be very, very serious. But the truth is we need to do the opposite. We need to bring a little bit of lightness and fun and competition, friendly competition. Those are the things that get us into our best mindset, right? And so what we do in the sticky focus game is we show somebody just with a pack of sticky notes how to bring themselves to almost any task, whether it's on the computer or filing. I've even had people, doing it for meetings and any task where you take a block of time and we allow you to gamify that, thereby bringing out your best self and bringing some lightness and brightness into your engagement. And then you find when you're doing that, my favorite study in productivity is they took a group of college kids and they divided them into 2 groups, and both of them had to file papers. We can agree that filing papers is a really boring job. The first one was just file it till you're done, the classic like, oh, filing papers, right? And the second group, they divided them into 2 and made them into teams. They had rules, referees, prizes. They gamified the whole thing. Guess what? This team worked 4 times faster, and they made way fewer mistakes, and they said they had a ton of fun. This team, of course, made more mistakes, worked slower, and hated the whole thing, right? So it just goes to show you can take any task, like filing papers, and given the right engagement, you can actually have fun, work fast, right? It's really not, I think we make it about the task. It's not about the task at all. It's about how we bring ourselves to the task.
That's a really important point, because I think earlier you also mentioned bring your love and the right positive energy to the task. And have boxes or time bounds. You can give half an hour, 40 minutes, 50 minutes to your task, or 1 hour. Now, is it okay to have some fun while doing it, but reward yourself? When should we reward ourselves? Should we reward ourselves? Should it be at the end of the hour? Should it be at the end of the day? Should we not reward? What's your policy?
Yeah. That's a great. I mean, first of all, don't forget. This is quite. I'm about to say something that could be controversial, but we've got this sort of Protestant work ethic culture that says like the reward for a good day's work is another day's work, right? You know, the reward for work is more work, right? And it's it's this like dreary, like punishment oriented, like nothing for you. You weren't good enough today, right? I'm not really saying that. But just remember that the feeling of walking in at the end of the day and knowing that there was no better way that you could have tackled your day, that you chose the right things to do, you worked on them efficiently, even if things came in, you handled those things with flexibility and a positive attitude. The feeling of coming in at the end of the day and having crushed it, that feeling, I call it the foyer mirror test. Where you walk in, you put down your keys, you look in the mirror, and you just go, nailed it, right? That feeling is the best reward, right? Just that feeling of like, oh my God, I nailed it today. I crushed it today. That in itself is a reward. But, you know, I have a whole list inside of Lifehack Tribe of what I call caloric and non-caloric rewards, right? So a lot of times people think it always has to be food because like in our culture, everything's about food, right? But the truth is my number one non-caloric reward when I'm done with a sticky session is a high five from my wife.
Aww.
High five. You know, just to get up and push away from the desk and be like, you know what? I just crushed that hour of work. And she'll be like, good job. And I'll go over and give her a high five. What is that? What's happening there? What's happening is the most consequential, important person in my life acknowledged me, right? That simple thing, that acknowledgement of like, you did good, that attaboy, the pat on the back. I need that, right? I even have, I don't have it here. I bought a little red buzzer on Amazon where you can record, and I had her record a message that said, good job, baby, and I could push it. It's a red button, and I can push, and it's my favorite person in the world saying, good job, baby, and I'll just push it. And she'll laugh from the other room because she'll keep pushing it, and I'll say, good job, baby, and she laughs from the other room because I love, even though I know it's a recording, I love hearing it.
That is so cute. I love that creative idea, and just something even simple, high-fiving. Some of the other rewards we could do is basically identifying things that we love to do. So you could just stand up and do a few stretches, a few dance moves if you like, a couple of, I don't know, yoga moves, downward dog, depending upon where you are. If you are still at home, go say hello to your kids if you have kids, or say hello to another loved one or your pet.
Or you know, I really love YouTube videos around like science and future and Mars and SpaceX and all that kind of stuff. I like it. So I have this playlist where what I'll do sometimes is instead of watching the videos, I'll just save. So I have this huge saved playlist. And then at the end of a sticky session, when I have like a 5-10 minute break, I can just watch one of them. So I'll give myself one of those videos, and they're always timed perfectly. It's like 5-10 minutes, just enough to be like, great, I got my mind off of it, was able to go to Mars and space for a second. Now I'm back. Let's do the next one.
I love that. Love that, really, that idea, really amazing. Now, in terms of, you earlier mentioned mindset is the first place where we start. What are some of the mindset blocks or beliefs that you see most people who are challenged with this kind of work we are faced with, and how can we overcome them? I know you have spoken about a few things here already.
I would say the best way to think about mindsets is that there's a mother and a father of all mindsets. And, you know, or a angel and a devil might even be the best one, right? Like the devil of all mindsets is a victim mindset. This is happening to me. I don't have the ability to fix this. This wasn't I didn't create this problem. Why is this happening to me right now? Like down that road is the birth of all that's the mother of all negative mindsets, right? And the angel mindset would be ownership, right? But ownership would be, how did I contribute to this problem? I had a really, really bad boss, and he did things that made it easy for me to be like, to point at him and be like, come on, I mean, come on, look at this guy. Like he did and said things that made it very easy for me to be a victim to him and to point to him and say, well, the reason I'm not getting promoted is because this guy is blocking. The reason I can't shine at my job is because he's not giving me good projects, right? Like it was easy for me to just sit back and be like, well, great, I have a perfect excuse for why I can't be successful because this guy is doing this thing to me. But when I first started flipping that and saying, how did I contribute to this? It made me realize that although I never would have made him a perfect person, there were things that I did that soured that relationship and made it as bad as it was. And that was the beginning of me starting to open myself up to the idea of ownership that's like, okay, maybe I didn't create everything here, but I certainly contributed to it and poured gas on the fire and made it worse. And then even more, if you want to get even deeper into ownership, it's like, okay, even if I didn't do anything to deserve this, nobody's going to fix it for me. I have to be the agent of changing this right now, right? I think we're collectively, I'm going to step into it right now. You can edit it out if you want, but like collectively, we're having a big moment right now with race in the United States. And I think there's a lot of people who are saying, but I didn't do this. I didn't own slaves. I didn't transport people from one country to another. True, totally true. But can we be in ownership and be the agent of changing it, right? Even if we weren't, so often we get trapped in victim mindsets because we get into these cul-de-sacs where we get in this circular logic where there's no escape, right? Well, this thing was done to me and therefore I can't do anything else. Well, like, what do you expect me to do here? As opposed to, okay, even if I didn't create this shitty situation, how am I the person who's going to take ownership for fixing it? And I'll tell you what, in any kind of horribly foobar situation, right? Like a marriage, a job relationship, a societal issue that feels intractable. If everybody simultaneously said, no, I'll own this, but instead of it just being one person, if everybody in the ecosystem said, okay, I see what I did to contribute to it, and I'm choosing to be the person who owns the change and who steps into the change, all of a sudden you see a relationship. If both people step into, I'm going to own the change and I'm going to fix it, and I'm not going to focus on how I'm being victimized or how I'm being wronged. I'm going to focus on what I can do to fix it. All of a sudden, that relationship could change over a week, over 2 weeks, where it's been, had intractable issues for decades, because victimhood puts us in a place where we are absolutely stuck. This is, again, what I call low truth, high truth. It could be true that your husband speaks to you in a way that you shouldn't be spoken to. It can be true. Like, these things can be true. I'm not denying the truth of them. I'm just saying that when you stay at that lower truth, you're stuck. It's like you painted yourself into a corner and you're sitting there and nobody's going to come save you, right? You have to put the cape on and be your own superhero and be like, now I'm going to save myself. I'm going to be the agent that changes this. And when multiple people do this, at a job, in a relationship, in society, all of a sudden possibilities open up where it seemed like there were none. So rant over.
So we talked about how do we take mindset control, right? Or how do we be in control of our mindset, but to be more productive. But what you told us allows us doing exactly the same thing. It's a two-step process. I'm going to repeat it. Allows us to take control of situations in our life, situations in our community or the world. And the two-step process is this. I'm just going to, just re-say it so that we can all kind of remember it. Yeah. One is to know what exactly is happening and what caused it. Ideally, how am I the contributor? We can always pinpoint fingers at other people, but what did I do or didn't do to contribute to this? Secondly, now I am going to wear my superhero cape. Right? That is very important to imagine that visualization is great. And how do I fix it, or at least help fix that situation?
Which is why, by the way, I think tactically, one of the things that's wrong right now is when you want to create societal change, you've got to give the people who are on the other side the ability to strap their cape on and to be a superhero. And when you deny them that, of course, they're just going to lock in and societally or even in a relationship. If you have an intractably broken relationship with your husband, you've got to give that person a way that they can be a superhero too. Because if you don't, then they're, of course, always just going to stay in that place of like, okay, well, I'm just going to be contra to you because you're not giving me any way to not be the bad guy if you're playing me as the bad guy, right? Everybody wants to be the good guy of their own story. Everybody wants to have a role where they can be the superhero and step into ownership. And in your company, in your relationships, you need to not only be the hero, but give somebody else an opportunity and a space to be a hero for themselves as well, so that they can see themselves as the hero of their story.
That's a really good point, and a lot of times you don't talk about that. Now, this is kind of moving into my space where I teach about communications and relationships, both at work and in life. I would love to expound a little bit on this because this is a really important point to share. How do you then let them be the superhero? Let's say you have a bad boss or a bad spouse or something else happening. What do you do to let them be the superhero?
I think holding space is an interesting concept, because it simultaneously is an active thing, but it's also an admission of powerlessness, right? When I hold space for my boss to repair the relationship, I'm not saying he will. He might not, but I'm also saying that I'm not going to fall into victimhood and continue to paint him as a, horrible Nazi, right? Like the worst of the worst of the worst. I'm going to occupy a new space where I'm doing what I can do, and I invite him, the door is open for him to step in and fix the relationship. But if he does or doesn't, I'm stepping away from what I call the excuse on the silver platter, right? And for me, I had to stop talking to my friends about how bad my boss was. Not because they would ever repeat it back to him, but because simply living in that mindset of he's so bad, he's so bad, he's so bad was dribbling poison into the relationship. I had to choose to say, I have to forever after let go of demonizing this guy. I have to step into a place of inviting him to be a better version of himself. But if he doesn't take it, not being like, well, fine then, punch him right in the nose and demonize him. I had to just open that space, open the door. It's like a horse. I had to just open the corral and invite him in and put the hay there, but then just go do my thing.
I love your analogies and the way you create these visual examples. It really brings the point home really, really beautifully. So you have been so amazing in giving us these gems of strategies and tips, which you've kind of learned the hard way for yourself. You've dug and you've experimented and analyzed and figured it out, and you're sharing it with us and making our lives easier, faster, more productive, and more fun time. So I love it. Let's do something fun, a lightning round. And I'm going to ask you some questions. I mean, you don't have to give me one-line answer, but these are going to be a little bit
fast answers. Let's do it.
Who's the most favorite person in your life? You said that earlier.
My wife. I mean, sorry.
I know, and I love your daughter. She's adorable. She is so cute.
She's great. I always tell her, I talk to her, she can't understand me, but I always say, listen, your mom's my favorite. And the reason is she does things for me. The baby doesn't do anything for me. I'm like, when you get older and you do things for me, you can be my favorite.
Exactly. Your wife is a favorite adult and she's a favorite little person. How about that? Perfect. All right. Second question. So Carrie and you, your wife and you work together. Mm-hmm. And you've been working together for what, 5 years, 6 years? And how does that?
We actually met working together in my past tech job. I actually worked for her. She was my boss. And I like to joke that I liked her being my boss so much I made it permanent. But no, it really was a great working relationship. I mean, partly is because I'm actually attracted to female power, right? And so many men have a problem with a really powerful woman, and I just love it. I remember walking on the first meeting with her and I was like, wow, she knows how to run a meeting. That was a beautifully run meeting. And I just admired her professional prowess, even before, a year almost before we were in a relationship. And then it's too long of a story, but Cupid shot his arrow, as it were.
Oh, that's so cute. Love it. Love it. And now as business partners, how do you, and living together, how does that work? My parents have worked together as business partners and they work beautifully. I would love to hear from you too.
Yeah, I mean, the short version is that we have never had a problem working together. And I think there's two things that I attribute that to. Although I also must say that we just also got lucky. Like we fit together really well, our personalities. But I would say there's two things I really attribute to not having problems. Number one is when we started this business, we both left the industry that we were in to come in. And so we were both starting at ground zero. And so there wasn't like somebody who felt like they were like the junior partner, right? Like, oh, well, Demir's the expert, but I'm just like helping Demir. No, like I have been a coach just as long as she has, right? We've been in this business the same amount of time. So that I think is really important, that we both started into something really clean and we both started at the same level. The second thing is that we have very clear lines of delineation. One interesting study I read is that they have couples who are going through therapy draw the floor plan of the house and color in the areas that are yours, that are his, and that are shared. And the couples that have the least amount of matching up are the ones that tend to have the highest conflict, right? So, he thinks the living room is his space and she thinks it's shared space, right? So they've got these sort of unmatched views. And so if you think about that almost like in the abstract, we take the different roles of our company, finance, finance, marketing, sales, coaching, curriculum, and we actually make very clear delineations of like, Carrie owns this. I can have input, I can make my opinion known, but at the end of the day, even if I'm 100% against it, she still gets to make the final call, and I don't get to, what's it called? I don't get to point fingers or sling mud at her. Ultimately, it's her call. And if it's a mistake, it's her mistake to make. Often we will fight with our spouse because we think we're saving them from a mistake, when often what we need to do is give them the space to make a mistake. Right? Because you're so clear that you're right, that you think to yourself, can't this idiot see that I'm just trying to help him? But sometimes what he or she, what any human being needs, is the space to have to make a mistake and learn from that mistake. And when we try to take that away from them, we're smothering them, right? And in fact, I always like to joke that there's been 5 or 6 times where I was like, fine, I'll let you make this mistake. And I'll be the bigger person and I'll just watch you. And every single one of those 5 times, it was not a mistake. She was right and I was wrong. And so after enough of those times, I was like, oh, well, maybe I'm not as right as I think I am about when she's making a mistake and when she's not. And so that's been a key ingredient of our success.
Love it. Really love it. I think that's very insightful. Okay, so the next question is this. I have been in communication with you on the phone, in your webinars, in your coaching sessions, and many times you're communicating with hundreds of people on that one call, or 30 people, or 50 people. And again, as a communications coach, I'm always observing things that other people are doing. And you're doing a fantastic job connecting. And a lot of the different things you're doing very well, but you connect with people really, really well, your audience members. And they come from a lot of different spaces and areas and industries and countries, etc., different life journeys. How do you connect with so many people at once? And I get this question from my students all the time too. Well, my audience is so diverse, so varied. I'm like, yes, almost everybody's audience is very varied. Tell me, what is your secret sauce?
I mean, I can just give you my perspective, which is that I think when you speak to everybody, you speak to no one, right? So, right now I'm speaking to you. If I got into my head that there's 3,000 people listening right now, it would send me into this weird stilted, I would start putting on these mannerisms and making this voice. And if you want to know my tick, I start yelling as if there's 3,000 people in front of me. I'll start yelling. My wife's like, you're just speaking on Zoom. You don't have to yell. But when I think I'm talking to a lot of people, I will start. That's just a tick. Everybody has their little ticks. So what I like to do is I really like to either focus in on one person and just speak to them, even though I know other people might be listening, or if there's nobody in front of me, I like to get a really clear sense of speaking to my twin brother, somebody who is smart but might not know this particular issue. So I'm not speaking down. I never speak down to him, even if I'm speaking about something that he doesn't know about. I love talking to him. He's just my sort of counterpart. Like we will get on the phone for hours and talk about things. So I enjoy talking to him. And it just seems like it brings out my best, most enthusiastic self. So if I'm speaking to a webinar where it's only my face and I just had a webinar where there are 850 people on it, right? I just speak to him. I get a really clear sense of I'm speaking to my twin brother. And the funny thing is people from all different cultures and ages and backgrounds and contexts feel like I'm speaking just to them. And the reason is because I'm speaking to one person in my enthusiastic and singular voice, and I'm being me. And then people can sort of say, wow, it felt so personal. Well, because I was talking to my twin brother. I was speaking to somebody where it would be personal.
And it shows we wouldn't know what to put our finger on, but that's why I kind of pointed that out, because it really does show. And and I've been on several conversations with you, so that's a phenomenal technique and tip and advice, and I think it came naturally to you.
Can I say one thing too? A lot of practice, just tons and tons and tons and tons of practice. Like I think a lot of people say, what's the secret? Well, if you really want the secret is tons of practice. I mean, technique, as you're practicing, technique is important. Make no mistake. Like there are things you can get stuck in and so technique is important. But like technique without practice is like you can't just watch a bunch of videos of shooting basketballs and then imagine that one day you're going to walk on the court and shoot free throws no, you need like 99% practice and like then 1-2% technique to then take into your practice.
Thank you so much for saying that. You made my job easier, because it's hard to hit that home, because people think my presentation or my talk is the deck, right? The slides or the PowerPoint, and we work on it till the wee hours of the morning, and the meeting is in a few hours, and you just show up without practicing, and that doesn't work. Absolutely.
I'm sorry, can I say one more thing to this? It's so relevant. We were not getting the results we wanted with a webinar that we were running, the webinars we had designed for the last 2 years. And so this year we made a vow. We said, you know what? The problem isn't the webinars. We went back, there were great content. The problem was we kept switching between webinars. We'd have a webinar, then we'd do it. Oh, that didn't work. Then 2 weeks later, we'd do another one. So we promised ourselves at the beginning of this year, we're doing one topic and we can't change that topic until January of next year. And we're going to do a webinar every single week on that topic. And here we are, I think 4 months later into that. And I got feedback from Brian Tracy's team. They were like, this is the best webinar I've seen in years. And what was it? Was it the content? No, we wrote the content 4 months ago. We have 6 other webinars that have content that's just as good. What was the difference? It's practice. I practiced it. I do this webinar every single week. And after I'm done with the webinar, I rewatch last week's webinar, make notes, and make improvements for the next one. I can tell you, if you just want to kill it with something, like practice it a lot, then watch yourself, then practice it again, then watch yourself. And if you do that a lot, you are going to crush whatever you're doing.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And you're my new best friend. You started as being my friend before the call. Now you're my new best friend. I love it. Thank you. And you can co-teach my course with me. I love your tips too. All right. So what does Demir do in his free time now that he has so much more of?
I'm a real project guy. So I created, say for example, 2 or 3 years ago, I created a power couples mastermind where I pulled together some of the most powerful couples that I felt like were living similar lives to Carrie and I, who were traveling around the world, creating lifestyle businesses. And I just did that in my spare time. And then I also, I'm an avid gardener. So I love gardening, and I'm also creating, I tend to create things. Right now I'm working on a project for local restaurants to try to save local restaurants that are being hit by COVID. I even in my spare time, I like to do things, but I like to do things that are totally unrelated to my job.
That's fantastic. I love it. I mean, those are kind of like your hobbies, which you get a lot of joy and inspiration also out of. That's phenomenal. All right, Demir, I know you have a little gift for our audience and our listeners. Tell us what that is, and where can we find you?
Yes. So what we have for you guys today, and it's one of the things that I think is one of my favorite things that we do. And I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right because good. Okay, good. So what I think we're going to be giving you is our Winning the Week download, and it's basically an outline, a map of with this concept of how do you win the week, how do you plan your week such that you win it. When you download it, you have the option of actually coming in and coaching with me live on that same topic. Not necessary, not mandatory, but if you download it, you'll both get the PDF in your email and you'll also get an invitation to come and coach with me live. So that's the gift for today.
Fantastic, and we will have the link to the free gift in the notes. Demir, what's the website? Tell us the website where we can find you.
So you can find us at lifehackmethod.com. It's lifehack, METHOD method.com. And also check us out on YouTube. We actually put a lot of our free content and a lot of our coaching onto YouTube because our mission is, helpful marketing. So when we're marketing, we want to be, even if people don't come and choose to join us for anything, we want them to watch our videos and engage with our stuff and walk away and say, well, even though I never bought that guy's stuff, it was incredible and I took something away from it.
Thank you so much. And Demir, this was fantastic. Thank you so much for being here with us and sharing all these insights and the intelligence and the intuitive knowledge. Love it, love it, love it. I have heard a lot of this before, but every time I hear you, I go back enriched and more empowered. And you should see my jar of stickies that I'm so happy to keep filling. Yes. Demir, thank you so much. And take care. Hugs and kisses, sending them your way. Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for you.
So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, please don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Also, if you would like to become a confident, articulate, and engaging speaker, please do check out our free course on speaking with confidence for maximum influence. The link to the course is in the details below.